Good morning. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here today. I just want to start by saying I really have a warm place in my heart for the United Church congregation. Of course, your pastor is always showing up for us and for this community, and when she said, I need someone to fill the pulpit for me today, I couldn't say no, even though this is not my comfort zone to be here. And I know so many of you have been such great supporters of Associate Ministries over the years, so really, really grateful. I couldn't not come to be with you. Thank you all for your acts of service and love to this community in so many ways, big and small, over the years. The community sees you. I see you. We see you at Associate Ministries, and we are really, really grateful for being a people who practice compassion and care and service. So my name is Mike Yoder. I'm the Executive Director at Associate Ministries. I've been in that role for about 7 years. We serve the people of all of Pierce County with a variety of services, mostly related to homelessness these days, from our office in Tacoma. We've been going for about 54 years now, and one of the keys to our ability, unique ability at AM to make a difference, has been our commitment to unite people, to journey together to make a difference. We have focused, like I said, primarily on homeless outreach and programs for the last 10 years, but we've done lots of different things over the years, and we've done it with the involvement of a lot of congregations. That's been one of our unique aspects of how we've achieved transformation in this community. I do want to say, before I go any farther, and you'll probably notice this pretty quick, but this is true confession time as I start out. My background is nonprofit leadership. I do not actually have a theology degree. I'm so grateful Kathy let me in your pulpit, even though. So that means you're probably not going to get a bona fide sermon this morning. For some of you, that's bad news. Maybe for others of you, that's good news. I don't know. But I do have some thoughts to share that I trust you'll find challenging and encouraging from my vantage point, more as a community leader working on the ground. My goal this morning is to inspire you that while there is an unprecedented need for housing and homeless services in this community, really all across our nation, we also have an unprecedented opportunity to change for the better the trajectory of our response to homelessness as people of faith. So I think we're all quite aware that Pierce County is facing an unprecedented homelessness crisis. I know we all see signs of that reality pretty much every day. And if we're being honest, even myself, some days meeting the needs of those experiencing homelessness can feel almost beyond hope. And when I'm out in the community and I sense skepticism or resignation, I shift into my normal Mythbusters mode. I think it's important to start by setting the record straight about what homelessness really looks like, lest anyone hang on to inaccurate information as a reason not to care or not to be involved. For example, I hear people talk about a typical homeless person experiencing homelessness as someone, I often hear someone who's older, single male, who came here from Seattle, chooses to remain outdoors in a tent with their shopping cart. People meeting that description certainly do exist, and indeed some of those characteristics are the most often publicly seen face of homelessness. But what we most easily see is far from the full story. Truth be told, those experiencing homelessness here in our community are of every age, including many minors. There are just as many women as men experiencing homelessness. There are just as many families as single individuals experiencing homelessness. And the vast majority of those currently experiencing homelessness in Pierce County formerly lived here in Pierce County as our neighbors. Surveys show, for example, that only 7% of those experiencing homelessness in Pierce County last lived in King County. So there's no great migration from another place. It's so bad up in Seattle, we've inherited their problems, and sometimes that can become an excuse to say, well, they're not our neighbors, we don't have to care for them. But that's not true. Finally, The truth is that when offered an appropriate option, the majority of those living in encampments are willing to accept services. People think that nobody who's living outside really wants to give that up. That's not true. It's just that they're not offered something that's appropriate or acceptable for them in their situation. Often they'll be offered shelter, indoor shelter, but they have to give up their beloved pet and those kinds of things. So I just want to start by saying that the unhoused around us look a lot more perhaps like us or someone we know than maybe you let yourself believe or imagine. So it is important that we have an accurate picture of those who are homeless, but we must never lose sight of the fact that the men, women, and children who find themselves without a place to live here in our community are our neighbors. They are our brothers and sisters who just happen to be at a place that no one truly wants to be in, and but for the grace of God, we could have ended up in a similar place ourselves, or could someday. So if we take the time to look just behind the facade of homelessness, many of us would see a story that's quite different than what we imagine. We might even be able to move beyond our resignation and indifference towards love. You know, as a staff over at Associate Ministries, we've been learning about a powerful concept that the antidote to any injustice is to love, to get connected, and to reclaim the sense that we belong to one another. We belong as a people, as a community, but for that to happen, we need to have love as the starting place, a place that facilitates empathy, compassion, and understanding. A focus of our office conversations these past months about love are those who are most impacted by the systemic lack of love, those who have been dismissed as unworthy and discarded, love of those most unloved by capitalism and affected by racial hatred, those incarcerated, and not just because of what they've done or not done, but as a shameful holdover from this country's history of enslaving Africans and waging genocidal terror against our native peoples. As a staff, we're learning that the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference, apathy, giving in to emotional fatigue, being somewhere on the denial spectrum, and not being courageous enough to say, I feel helpless, my heart hurts, I feel utterly terrified, powerless, ashamed. Truth be told, our nation's inability to care for people experiencing homelessness is evidence of a system in which justice has unraveled. Our government and our economic systems purport to offer freedom and justice for all, but even before the pandemic, the American way of life was resulting in an ever-increasing income and wealth gap. One of the effects of this kind of inequality is homelessness. But here's the good news for those of us in this space today. As people of faith, we understand that the ultimate purpose of God is to bring about justice and abundance for all people. We also need to recognize that we have a role in working with God to bring about his dream of a flourishing life for all people. And just like Moses had to learn in the Old Testament, the Exodus story happened by the power of God, but in actuality, it was the power of God working through the willingness of Moses. His dramatic story is a great example of how God chooses to work through the willingness of human initiative and courage and resilience. It's the way he still chooses to work today. It's easy for those of us who have enough, or more than enough, to close the doors of our homes and let our system of inequality maintain itself. But God calls us to more. We know that because of the Exodus story. This is the truth of our God who invites us to hope each day, no matter what we see in our neighborhoods or hear on the news. We are invited to an active hope, doing what we can to speak truth to power against unjust systems, to be kind to neighbors, and to simply love one another in all we do. Unfortunately, my words today, however inspiring they may be, aren't going to be an adequate substitute for hearing the voice of God. I won't be able to issue you a call today like Moses received in Exodus through the burning bush, but I do believe God is calling you. and even if you feel inadequate to respond, as Moses felt, I assure you that he can use you too. You may say, but I'm not a Moses, to which I would say, of course you aren't, but God is still God. So let's start with some context setting by looking briefly at a few of the factors behind the reality of homelessness that many of our neighbors are experiencing. And then I'll share a few ideas about how we might be called to do something about it. When I encounter a big issue like homelessness, my mind always wants to know, why is this happening? There are many factors, starting with a severe shortage of affordable housing, layered on top of decades of wage stagnation, ever-increasing behavioral health challenges, and now economic instabilities as our world recovers from a global pandemic and the inflation that has resulted. I hope I can share a little bit more of details about some of this stuff after the service, when I think we're going to have a little forum. But I would like to just give a couple brief examples right here in this space related to each of the factors behind homelessness I've just mentioned. So new home construction has only recently returned to the level it was when the 2008 recession hit. So for all these years, 14 years now, our nation has massively underbuilt the number of housing units our communities need to keep pace with growing populations, which has led to record housing unaffordability. In Pierce County, we've only built 80 new housing units for every 100 new people who have moved here in the last decade. That's a crisis in the making. As for wages, if the minimum wage that was set in the 1970s had kept up with inflation since then, it would need to be more than $20 per hour today. So this generous $15 per hour wage that is earned by many in entry-level jobs these days might seem generous compared to the other states or in recent history, but it is nowhere near enough to cover our average rents and costs here. It has not even begun to keep up with actual costs. And finally, another big factor, few people realize this, but when it comes to available behavioral health resources, so that's the facilities and personnel needed to treat mental health crises and substance abuse issues, Pierce County, Washington, is near the very bottom of the list of available resources in all of America. Many of our neighbors with untreated behavioral health issues aren't stable enough to maintain a job or a home, and so they end up homeless. And we have done nothing about that as a community to take care of their needs. So those are the hard facts. As for what can be done, well, there is a new hope for a way ahead. Our community came together in 2021, lots of people from lots of different sectors, and they outlined a new comprehensive plan to end homelessness. And it was formally adopted by the Pierce County Council within this past year. And it's not just another document on a shelf. It actually is a realistic roadmap that could, if followed, could get chronic homelessness to what they call functional zero within the next decade or sooner. It is the most complete and practical plan we've ever had as a community. And while implementing its recommendations are going to be a very heavy lift, at least we now have realistic targets to aim for. We have a roadmap for this community that could end up with homelessness being, if we have the courage to do it. But getting really practical for folks like you, I just want to say, there's even some ground level super practical things that I'm encouraged by. One of which is just the growing awareness and involvement of congregations. I mean, let's just start right here where we are this morning. Would you believe around 70 different faith communities from throughout Pierce County have attended, members from 70 different faith communities have attended one or more of our community quarterly meetings, which are gatherings that Associated Ministries hosts 4 times each year. I'm imagining some of you in this room have attended those meetings. We convene them in partnership with other homeless and housing agencies and service providers with the goal of creating an energizing space for people of faith and goodwill to gather and learn about, discuss, and take action on the crisis of homelessness. Attending our next community quarterly meeting would be a great first step. And I invite you to join us in person. We're going to meet on Thursday, February 16th in a couple of weeks. 5 p.m. at the Bryant Neighborhood Center. That's at Trinity Presbyterian in the Hilltop area. Registration is open on our website if you want to join us, and just come and learn. We're going to have a really awesome overview of homelessness in Pierce County, and just a discussion of some practical things that can be done, and just to be in communion with other people who care about this issue. Another excellent way to take a first step is to volunteer to serve at one of our Project Homeless Connect resource fairs. Unfortunately, we just held this event 2 days ago, and the next one isn't scheduled till this summer. We just do them 3 times a year, but be on the lookout for the next event and consider signing up to help serve those in need. Project Homeless Connect, each event brings together dozens of organizations and operates as a one-stop hub of services for those in need. And we have on-site employment opportunities, medical, dental, and mental health services, free lunch, haircuts, giveaways, and more, all in one space. It's a beautiful, beautiful space to be in. Lots of people are connected to lots of life-changing services right in that space. And volunteering just to help us that day at that event is just an excellent first step, just to be in the same space with and come alongside our unhoused neighbors in a really practical way, and to better understand them and their world. And there are a number of other ways you as an individual, as a family, as a small group here at your church, maybe your Rotary, your Kiwanis Club, your neighborhood association, or your workplace, can come together and make a difference in the lives of our unsheltered neighbors. I have some flyers that I'll make available after the service that list just a few of the serving opportunities available. There are practical things you can think about doing right now. And while I have your attention, I have to highlight one of our newest programs, which are opportunities for those who are ready to get a bit more deeply involved, which is the ideas of adult home sharing and youth host homes. These are new programs at Associated Ministries. Adult home sharing is a program designed to address the severe lack of affordable housing by creating a living arrangement in which a homeowner offers accommodation, usually a spare bedroom, to a home seeker in exchange for the payment of rent or assistance with household tasks or transportation or just companionship. Home sharing creates a win-win situation, and we have a beautiful program that screens and connects in really valid and appropriate ways a home seeker and a home provider, and has created some beautiful win-win situations on both sides. And then we have another variation of that, our youth host home program. In that one, we pair a young person experiencing homelessness with a caring household who wants to make a difference in the lives of a young person by providing both living space and mentorship also, while the young person is enrolled in a formal program that enables them to attain their self-sufficiency. And youth homelessness is up over 40% in the last couple of years in this community, so this is an opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of a young person. That young person will usually come to live with you just for 1 year, and they're being formally mentored and case managed, and so you're just providing just a stable place to live with a family for a year, and there's financial compensation for that as well. So even if you haven't been involved in any of these opportunities yet, I do want you to recognize that any success, either big or small, that results from coming together as a community, that belongs to all of us. So it's not just necessarily about what you yourself do, but about what you do in community. Do your part by attending community gatherings, volunteer at your community center or our Project Homeless Connect. Contact your elected leaders and advocate for policies that protect the vulnerable. We have a opportunity to implement a 0.1% additional sales tax that will create $20 million per year to spur on affordable housing development. That's going to be voted on by our county council in March. That's an important thing to advocate for. Of course, it's always important to donate to organizations that are making a difference, and your congregations provided a lovely stipend for Associated Ministries today. So grateful for that. That makes a difference. And that's something that all of you now are a part of. It's something you can say, we've done something to make a difference. And we have to celebrate every one of those things. because you just really are never going to know the full impact that your service or the service of others you encourage or talk to, you never know the impact that's going to have on others. But sometimes we just have to go by faith and believe that what we are doing is making a big difference. I just want you to believe that. So let me leave you with this thought. God doesn't always speak to us in ways we expect. Moses certainly didn't expect to hear God's voice coming from a fiery bush in the desert. But what I hope you'll take from that story is this: God didn't speak until Moses decided to investigate. God made the first move, but it was up to Moses to engage him further. God had something to say, but only if Moses wanted to hear it. So what about you? Have you ever had a burning bush experience? God often speaks to us at key junctures in our lives through the voices of others or through events or encounters. God could be trying to speak to you through almost any situation, from extraordinary to ordinary. Maybe that nagging feeling you have in your gut every time you drive past someone living in a tent isn't just indigestion. Burning bushes show up in many forms. But if we investigate what God is trying to tell us through them, they tend to all have one thing in common: they're life-changing. They rarely make life easier, just more meaningful. But like Moses, we have to be willing to stop, tune in to what God is saying, and boldly follow him. There are hundreds of our neighbors who will be sleeping unsheltered on the streets of our community this very evening. And some of them may be praying that God is speaking to you about coming alongside them in their time of need. And although it can seem overwhelming to even know where to start, I want to encourage you with these words from author Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world all at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding to, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. So my prayer for all of us is that we will never give up on loving our neighbors. Repeating the wisdom of Holocaust survivor and author Elie Wiesel, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. So I urge you, choose love today.